Steele, the conceited purebred Malamute that serves as the antagonist of the 90s film Balto, is one of the more niche villains in animated films. That is, if you can even consider him a villain. Steele has seemingly been mischaracterized by a vast majority of the small fandom that makes up the people who enjoy the Balto films. Many people tend to see him as an unforgivable evil character who thinks about nobody but himself. Some people mindlessly root for the protagonist without deep thought of the logic behind the protagonist's actions. Others remain disappointed that he wasn't killed off in the films, with the writers considering it in the deleted storyboards. Throughout the last few months, I have been deeply analyzing the emotional and logical pieces that make up this film. Most notable for having a very egocentric personality. The majority of people claim that his ego is inevitable downfall. That is only partially true. Steele is a professional racing dog, and a well-praised one at that. Based on observation, Steele has this reputation because of what he does, not because of who he is as a character. This environment is considered by professionals to be highly toxic mentally to developing minds such as a young Steele. According to a licensed psychiatrist, Dr. Mazzala, research has shown that children who receive excessive praise may develop an unrealistic self-image, believing that they are inherently superior to others. This distorted self-perception can cause them to expect constant admiration and special treatment from those around them. When they encounter criticism or not the center of attention, they may react with frustration, anger, or a sense of injustice. This is because their self-worth is heavily reliant on external validation rather than a stable internal sense of confidence. The statement provided closely matches to many of the observed personality traits that Steele shows, and we confer that Steele possibly has never had a genuine connection with another dog for his personality, not because of his capabilities. Steele's ego also acts as a sort of shield to hide his true inner feelings. It makes him look big and bad, despite feeling lonely and insecure on the inside. From my observations, he wants to lead things because it makes him feel something. It makes him less like an empty husk. One of the many overlooked aspects of Steele is how isolated he is from the other dogs, including his team. Steele considers his team as his friends, but his team, on the contrary, does not consider him as a friend. In fact, they notably despise Steele. In the film, they could be seen openly talking behind his back once he leaves. The scene follows directly after the mocking of Balto for being a wolf dog, with Caltag stating, "He is the most malicious, the most disgusting, and the most obnoxious, the most revolting, the most repulsive, the most," when referring to Steele. Steele is truly on his own when it comes to having another character to talk to, and this psychological factor may contribute to his overall mental breakdown as seen in the film. Balto, on the other hand, has caring and loving friends such as Muck and Luck, Boris, and even Jenna is on his side. The film wants you to believe that Balto is the lonely dog due to simply being a wolf dog. It's more reasonable to consider him being an outcast due to being an inexperienced stray. In the film, it's said early on that Steele is losing his racing prowess. His musher asks the photographer, I don't know, you think maybe Steele's losing his edge? To which the photographer responds with, yeah, it looks like just about any dog can outrun him. Steele is a working dog, a Malamute. It would realistically make sense for him to be upset hearing that his musher isn't very happy with his performance. That being said, Steele's whole identity is his job. It's the only thing he knows, considering he has no real friends. Steele knows that Balto is both younger and faster than him, and is considerably terrified of the idea of replacement. With that idea in mind, as Steele is afraid of being replaced by Balto, a lot of his actions start to make sense. He wasn't bullying Balto for being half-wolf. Steele was trying to keep his job, the only thing he had going for him. Steele was trying to scare Balto away from his position. In the frame above, Steele is lost and trying to find a trail. His face shows desperation and fear of losing his job and hence losing himself. Steele at the climax of the movie is, at first glance, irrational. He is fighting Balto, while Balto just wants to help to bring the medicine back. Most people on first viewing tend to simply dismiss this as a malevolent and evil, with his ego taking hold. However, taking into account the previous observations made, Steele knows he's already lost everything after crashing the sled. He's having a full-on panic attack by that point, as seen in the frame below. Now, picture this. You're a professional sled dog, and your sled just toppled over a hill, and you're lost. You've already heard rumors of your replacement, and you're trying to show that you're still fit for the job. The job that is your only opportunity and your dream job. Is the job that makes you who you are. In your state of daze and panic, knowing you might never have this job again because the musher is now unconscious by the sled, your rival appears. He's the perfect candidate to do everything you do, but better. In this case, he offers to throw you out and take over your job early. Knowing myself, I would react quite irrationally as well. It's one of the most human traits about Steele as a character. He reacts to external forces in the most plot-affecting way. During the fight scene, he is in no way thinking straight. He's afraid, and he's trying to prevent Balto from taking his place, his identity. By the time Steele is knocked off the cliff, he's aware that his team prefers Balto over him. In a last-ditch effort, as a way to show them that his team would have been better off with him rather than with Balto, he attempts to sabotage the tree markings Balto made. At this moment, Steele does not think of the children, not because he's thinking about himself, but because he's not aware of the direness of the circumstances, unlike Balto, who saw Rosie in the hospital firsthand. From the speed Steele gets home, we can infer that maybe he was correct and that the team would have been better off going home with him. Balto in this occurrence shows blatant incompetence. Let's look at this subject from a mathematical standpoint. The forest can be modeled as a point set in 2D space, where each point represents a marked tree. From the graph above, we can observe that both sabotage marks and the tree markers are spatially collinear. They all lie along the same geometric path along the forest. The red line represents the underlying trajectory. Steele simply introduced noise, which still leaves the main path in a perturbation invariant state, especially if you follow said path home. In layman's terms, Balto could have just followed the same marks on the trees, and he still would have gotten home. And even if Steele didn't take Balto's path home, the marks he made would have still led to a quicker route home. Balto, while leading the sled, also happens to take on some of the aspects of Steele, more so wanting to prove that he is better than Steele, which is rather competitive of him. Nikki states, "Maybe we was better off with him then," in reference to Steele, before Balto blurts out, "No, come on, mush." Balto says this line in a confident, yet snarky way that almost gives us a view into his true character. It's one of the few negative traits Balto has as a character. Balto, in fact, has so many positive traits with no explanation for him that he can be generally ruled out as a Gary Stew. The story makes an attempt to try to show Balto as a poor wolf dog who doesn't believe in himself, yet it never actually impacts the direction of the plot. If Balto were a random stray purebred husky, or possibly even a male dog, the majority of the story would remain the same. Instead, Steele making fun of for being wolf dog, he would be making fun of Balto for being a stray or a male boy. Because as I stated earlier, Steele has no care for Balto's breed. Steele is just trying to protect the only thing he has. Balto being able to run faster than a professional team of racing dogs should not be possible, without training or experience beforehand. Nobody ever explains why he can do this, he just does. If we look back at Balto's overconfidence stated earlier, we can somewhat assume that there is some sort of rivalry to be made. I mention this because after Balto brings back the medicine, he simply goes back to the ship after being praised. He never becomes a sled dog like his supposed goal again was, and we never see Rosie until the third sequel. It makes you debate whether he even really cared in the first place. It is often said that behavior like this within an individual traces back to their earliest days, their childhood. The most formative period of anyone's life begins then. So why choose to scratch the surface of Steele's personality and the demeanor when you could dig much deeper? I thought of a possible backstory Steele could have lived through when he was young. A dominating male figure in his life, his father, is Steele's inspiration and leader. His father saw him as no son. As a retired racing champion, he lived out his last years through Steele's success. Steele was pushed to be a winner, to be the best he could be, or else he would deemed by his father to be worthless to him and everyone around. In these years, Steele would have gained the mindset that he must always hold the winner's title, no matter the cost. He will be loved by all, he'd think, to make up for what he wasn't given when he was young. But of course, such a strong impression from a constant figure of one's childhood would leave other marks as well. As many would, with no other positive outlets in our life, they would begin to, in a way, absorb what is inflicted onto them to project elsewhere. I believe that this is not only where Steele's egomania traces back to, but also the way he speaks. For the majority of the film, when he believes or wants others to believe he is in control, his voice is dark, brooding, and in some ways dominating. But at the last few lines Steele speaks before he's never seen again, show him with a soft, quivering voice. I'd like to say that the voice he spoke in then is what he really sounds like in comparison to earlier lines, which I find him in those scenes to be subconsciously mimicking his father, that dark, brooding presence that lurked in his upbringing, the person who made him who he is now. Balto is now home with the medicine, and the dogs around Steele finally put the pieces together. At this moment, he's lost everything. He has lost his friends, his career is coming to an abrupt end, and Steele is left alone, a failure, potentially his greatest lifelong fear, to be seen as nothing and no one. I believe that in this moment he realizes that his way of gaining those things the way he did was unsuccessful, but he couldn't fully understand why. His methods were entirely an unknowing recreation of his dad's and the emotional neglect he had put on him many years ago.
Wait a minute, guys. Wait just a second. Please.
Balto, when referring to the movie itself, oddly portrays the overlooking of Togo quite well, despite not even including Togo. If we picture Steele as Togo, then look at the logical analysis of who did more work in real life, it starts to become clear. Like Togo, Steele did the longer distance, and equating danger to the longer distance, Steele likely did the more dangerous part of the run as well. However, like in real life, Balto was the one who was there on arrival, leading him to take a majority of the credit. As the National Park Service puts it, though Balto received the credit for saving the town, to those who know more than the Disney story, Balto is considered the backup dog. Balto ran 55 miles, while Togo's later journey was the longest and the most dangerous. Another interesting aspect is how Simon Wells perceived Steele when picking a voice actor. As he stated, my idea with Steele was that he was basically the quarterback of a football team. He was the god because everyone said he was a god. I saw Steele as being a bit more nuanced, as the kid who misunderstands his role in the world and suffers from jealousy and anger issues. I like Brendan because he had that kind of voice in his kind of quality in his voice. In the quote, Wells makes Steele out to be more of an emotionally deep character with feelings that a lot of other characters don't really show in the film. It definitely aligns with my observations. However, based on how Spielberg interfered with Wells when choosing a voice actor, where it was stated that Spielberg requested a different performance, feeling that Fraser's didn't contain enough relevance. That leads me to believe that Spielberg and Wells had completely different ideas of Steele, as a part of me believes that Spielberg was one who originally wanted to have a death scene for Steele. Many people I talk to who are aware of the death scenes for Steele that were deleted seem to have this violent urge to wish that they were made canonical. They believe that the scenes would have fit better than Steele simply being ostracized and swapping roles with Balto. The death scene would have been genuinely the worst way to end Balto. It's just traumatizing the characters and the audience. The worst part being how completely unfitting and cruel the punishment is for the character's actions. Imagine how Rosie's live-action granddaughter would look at Rosie when she says that part. A lot of people seem to forget the whole story we're seeing is literally told by live-action Rosie to her granddaughter. She's making stuff up as she talks, because otherwise the story would be about her staring at the ceiling and coughing. If she describes how Steele dies like that, then maybe she needs therapy, because that's kind of messed up to tell your grandkid. Also, the sequels would feel borderline psychopathic if they remained the same. Looking at the storyboards, Balto is clearly horrified at what he's witnessed, and knowing his personality is caring and empathetic, I doubt he'd ever live that down. In fact, he might even blame himself for it. It's unnecessary killing that totally ruins the atmosphere of everything else. It's even more ridiculous and unnecessary when Steele isn't even deserving of it. The punishment is far out of proportion. This entire document has been pointed to. Steele isn't even evil. He's just really insecure and going for an identity crisis. The picture is from one of the storyboards for the scene. I myself find the storyboard alone quite horrifying. Steele is being hung by his own collar and is clearly struggling, terrified. What do you think his musher would say, having the sheriff knock on his door, holding the corpse of his best lead dog, with his white fur stained black with coal, probably mostly preserved from the cold? The same dog that he probably spent a good deal of time training. I don't think the townspeople would be very happy to see him go either. They may be distracted by Balto, but they do show Steele is popular across Alaska. What a saddening message to receive. Steele's current fate is perfect. He switches roles with Balto. Thematically, it's more aligned to the plot. It feels realistic. It leaves room for the viewer to imagine their own story for how Steele moves on. They leave a perfect place to begin a genuine redemption arc. As mentioned before, you can hear his voice quiver with actual shame and regret at the very end, when the door shuts. Not every cartoon antagonist needs a violent death. What Balto did was unique, and it leaves a lasting impression that death can't.